Thank you very much, Thorsten, for these very kind words. I am greatly honored to be the recipient of the Perlmeister Greengard Prize, an international award recognizing outstanding women in biomedical science. I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude to the jury for selecting me as the inaugural recipient of this prestigious prize. This event arouses in me a very profound emotional feeling which is related to the intention underlying the creation of the prize itself. First, it relies upon the rare generosity of an outstanding scientist, Paul Greengard, whose work I have followed over many years and whom I admire for his remarkable achievements in neuroscience. But this prize is exceptional because of its human content, to which I am particularly sensitive. It was created and named as a tribute to the mother of Paul Greengard, lost when she was giving birth to him, to a woman who no one else could ever replace and was missed ever since. Most remarkably, with an intention of grand nobleness, Paul Greengard has extended this tribute to recognize the women who, like himself, work in science and whom he knows have had to surmount many obstacles, discriminatory practices, and the prejudicial attitudes that were ingrained in our society throughout the last century. For a French researcher like me, receiving such a mark of esteem from the world-renowned Rockefeller University, and having been chosen by a jury composed of biologists of the highest international prestige, is of special value. I am doubly pleased by receiving this prize because it not only recognizes my efforts and those of my colleagues, but it also identifies the field of vertebrate developmental biology as one which has vigorously returned to the center of attention that it held at the golden age of experimental embryology. At that time, Hans Spemann and Hilde Mangold, the first woman embryologist, revolutionized biological thought by introducing the concept of the organizer as the initiator of a necessary cascade of developmental events. I entered the field of embryology fascinated by the questions raised by those pioneers, and have been privileged to contribute to and witness the unveiling of some of the answers that resulted from the revolution that has taken place in cellular and molecular biology. I cannot imagine a more exciting time to be an embryologist than during the last 30 years. As you will see, the route I followed has been a somewhat convoluted one. I was born in Brittany, in the town of Lorient. My father was a merchant and my mother a schoolteacher in a small village nearby. It was some time after Jules Ferry created the enseignement gratuit et obligatoire pour tous, that is, compulsory and free education for everyone, the greatest achievement of the French Third Republic. Les instituteurs, as we called them, or teachers of that time, had the central and very exciting role of transforming a rural population that had no access to culture other than that inherited by tradition into literate persons speaking French and not exclusively a local dialect, and able to enter what was at that time the modern world. The school was small, and the teacher was responsible for children from the 6 to 16 in the same class. I was one of my mother's pupils until the age of 10, when I was admitted to the lycée in the city of Nantes, which was a boarding school where I got my secondary education leading to the baccalaureate. My father, a very able man, was the pillar of the family, and he provided us with a comfortable life. My childhood was happy for the period, except for the period of the Second World War. It took my father to the front, and later on, in 1943 to 1945, the war became very close to us, since the city of Lorient was totally destroyed by bombing, and so was partly the city of Nantes. My mother had a great impact on me. In addition to being loving and paying great attention to me and my education, she instilled in me a passion for learning with the same intensity that she applied in her efforts to bring up her pupils to the world of knowledge. She also transmitted me a lifelong interest and commitment to educate others. In the late 1940s, when it was time for me to go to university, the University of Paris and a few others, like that of Strasbourg, were dominant in France for their prestige and the quality of the teaching they provided. Because I was living in Brittany, my normal and compulsory destination should have been the University of Rennes in the center of Brittany. But my mother arranged for me to be accepted in the Sorbonne. I had first thought of concentrating in French literature and Latin Greek and spend 1 year studying these subjects. But I soon decided that I really wanted to do biology, a field for which I had gained a particular interest during my last year in the lycée. I enjoyed my years in the Sorbonne in Paris. Also, life just after the war was not easy. I decided to be a high school teacher in biology and passed a competitive exam called Agrégation de Sciences Naturelles, which conferred upon those who succeeded a status that ensured you the lifelong position of professeur de lycée. I was 23, married, and my first daughter, Claire, was just born. Teaching in a lycée was acceptable to me, but after 2 or 3 years, I realized that also contact with children whose age ranged from 11 to 18 was interesting. It would not fulfill my intellectual aspirations. Fortunately, I was at that time involved in motherhood with my little girl, Claire, and the birth of my second daughter, Lorraine. They are now both medical doctors, and I have the joy of having 4 grandchildren. After 3 years in the provincial town of Caen and having been highly regarded as professors, both my husband and I obtained position in a Parisian lycée in 1957. It was then that I decided to go back to university that I sorely missed. Research seemed to me more appealing and more in phase with my taste for challenges and my profound desire to progress. But finding a laboratory in the late 1950s where I could start doing research even on a voluntary basis during the spare time left by my teaching activities and at the age of 29 was not an easy endeavor. It was my fortune to be introduced to Étienne Wolf, a professor at the Collège de France, who was at that time one of the most active experimental biologists in France. He headed the laboratory not in the historical building of the Collège, Place Marcellin Berthelot in Paris, but in a nearby suburb, in a beautiful park located in Nogent-sur-Marne, bordering on the Bois de Vincennes. Generously, Etienne Wolf provided me with the opportunity to do experiment, assigning to me a research project studying the development of the digestive tract from the endoderm. This, he said, was a subject that had been neglected and needed to be revisited. I thus became interested in the cellular interactions that are involved in liver development and in the differentiation of hepatocytes. After 2 years, during which I worked as a teacher in the lycée and part-time in the lab, I became a full-time researcher thanks to the CNRS, which provided me with a salary. I was then 31, and 3 years later, in 1964, I got my thèse d'état, my PhD. I was thereafter appointed as assistant professor at Clermont-Ferrand, a city located in the center of France, at about 500 kilometers from Paris. My family remained in Paris, and I therefore had to commute weekly to give my lectures. I was also given the responsibility to supervising 2 young students who had to carry out a research project for their graduation. It was at that time that I began to use quail embryos, in addition to those of the chick, in experiments designed to study the interactions between the two components, mesenchymal and epithelial, of the glands that develop as appendages of the digestive tract. The quail eggs actually had been introduced to embryology labs in France by a CNRS researcher, Ernst Boesiger, who used these species for genetic purposes. In the following year, in 1966, my husband and I were appointed to positions at the University of Nantes. But I encountered some difficulties there. The dean did not like the idea of having a married couple, both as professors, in his university. So he proposed that I be appointed to the position of assistant, which was at a lower grade than the one I had in Clermont-Ferrand. Fortunately, Professor Wolf, who had an enormous prestige, embraced my cause and succeeded in convincing the dean to make an exception and recruit me as assistant professor, as he was doing for my husband, just on the ground of our respective merits. This was done. But it was not without consequences. I was provided with a heavy teaching load and with neither space nor research facilities. It was thanks to the generosity of Georges, my husband, that I could continue to work in the laboratory, since he was willing to share with me what he had been given as space and support. Fortunately, after 2 years, the CNRS, always the CNRS, gave us a position for a technician and funded the research. The purpose and challenge of university teaching is to give students the taste for seeking new knowledge, asking questions, and not readily accepting dogmas, even if they seem to be solidly established. In Nantes, I had the dual fortune of making an observation that changed the course of my work and of recruiting bright and loyal young people who embarked with me on what turned out to be an enthusiastic scientific adventure for the rest of my life.